So stop me whenever, or come to my office. I am very approachable. I am not innately an I. I kind of became more of an I personality. Do you guys know what that means? I is like an inspirer. I had to become that way through this business. So, and being around people like Jess and Ann Yance, who was our first team leader, really kind of helped me realize that I need to kind of come out of my shell a little. I'm naturally what Gary Keller is, and he's a high D and a C. Over the years, my C has kind of, I don't want to deal with the details anymore. I just want to deal with the big picture.
Or you can give it to me. I ain't got time.
Yeah, I ain't got time anymore. So,
Sure.
yeah.
So Karen,
Yes.
give us a little bit of introduction. How long have you been in real estate, and what were you doing before you got into real estate?
Sure. So I was born in New Jersey, right outside New York City, and went to college at University of Maryland, which is right outside DC. And I stayed there for 12 years, got married, had my son there in DC, and at the time it was late 1990s and the market was like on fire. And I remember selling our first house, and it wasn't, we used a real estate agent, and thinking, man, I can do this. Well, life took us to New England, and I knew that I was not selling real estate up there. There's just no way, no how. It was just a different demographic, and I wound up staying home for 8 years with my kids. Prior to that, I worked on Capitol Hill. I have a finance background, and thought I was going to do some big things in politics, which is like being famous in Hollywood. It's hard to make that happen. And I did get to work in the White House, which was kind of cool. I worked for Hillary Clinton, and then I did work for Senator Ted Kennedy for a bit, and I worked for a lobbying firm. They were all great, but mostly on the finance side. They were great opportunities. And then staying home with my kids for 8 years was something I never in a million years thought I would do. I was on the career path, didn't think that, I'd be good at staying home mom position, and I really wasn't. I was actually pretty awful at it. But I survived, and the kids were so little too. I mean,
and they're good kids.
And they survived.
They're still alive.
They are the most amazing. You would think that you say that, and they'd be like, "Oh, Evan's probably gonna be in jail in 10 years, whatever." They are seriously the most amazing, well-behaved,
They're good kids.
polite, just good human beings,
Yeah.
and they make amazing.
They're
friends.
15 and 13
So
now.
good.
So they were babies, and so I had my son, in Virginia, and then McKenna up in New England, and I think one of the reasons that why I stayed home was because I found out my daughter, less than a month old, had a hearing loss, and I was bound and determined that she was not going to have any issues, that she was going to be just like any kid, and the hearing loss was only going to help her. And so over the course of that 8 years, it was a good time for me to probably be home. And I got her living outside of Boston. We had a plethora of medical facilities available, and she's the smartest person in my house. I mean, she is like so smart, brilliant, straight A student. You never know she. Well, you.
Yeah, and when you're having a bad day, McKenna is the grown up, that tries to put you back on track, right?
Yeah, she's just really
amazing.
mature, and she's happy, and she's never let her hearing loss deter her. In fact, she's used it sometimes to her advantage at home. Oh yes, very much so. But anyway, so that's kind of what happened prior to moving to North Carolina. North Carolina was a voluntary move because I can't tell you how many years I was like, so I'm living for 2 months out of the year, living 2 months for June and July, and then it would snow again come, late September, October. And so having lived in DC where there was, nice seasons and you got some warm summers, we entertained moving back to DC, and unfortunately with me being home, it just didn't make financial sense. So we started to look at other options, and Charlotte was it, and we just pulled the trigger, moved to Waxhaw. Schools were important to us, so we were looking, if I could do it all over again, I would live much closer in, but, you live for a place and make choices for a reason, and so I lived there in Waxhaw for about 1.5 years before I started really thinking about getting into real estate, and I went to career night over at Superior. I'm sure Bill, I don't know whoever does it.
Isn't that
over
weird?
there,
They
right?
used to do that because they did not have
They
Craig
did.
Superior
Mhm.
when I was.
Yeah, and I'm not quite, I don't know if it was Bill Garrett, I think it was Bill
With Bill
Gallagher.
Gallagher when I went.
Yeah.
You went to a career night at
Yeah,
Superior?
yeah.
They have them right now.
They do?
Yeah, Jess, they had it, we had it in our, before we signed up, they had that. It's just that it was, it was a while back
I guess
ago.
they just don't have
I couldn't understand half he said, but.
Yeah. Liza, write that down, Liza.
Foreigner.
She would speak Southern, yeah.
He's a character. So anyway, so I went there and I was like, I should do this. And a friend of mine who was in real estate already said, I was gonna go to the Allen Tate Real Estate School because I was going to be an Allen Tate agent. And there was nobody that was gonna talk me out of it. And a friend of mine said, you need to go to Superior and then make a decision. I was like, well, if I'm gonna be an Allen Tate agent, I should just go to their school because I might have an in, right? So prior to that, I started really looking at the real estate market in my neighborhood. There's about 280 homes in my neighborhood and realized that nobody had any market share. So I knew instantly if I got my real estate license, that's one of the first things that I was gonna do is just go after the business in my neighborhood in Waxhaw, which happened to, feed into the Marvin Ridge School District. So I knew the schools were gonna be a huge factor. I got my license, and you're not gonna believe this because you all just came out of real estate school probably in the last 5 years. Keller Williams I did a night class, was the only real estate company that came out and presented. It was Jay White and Cynthia Matheny, who's still a KW agent, but she's left this market center and lives in Iowa? Somewhere, someplace that begins with an
Oh,
I.
Idaho?
Idaho, yeah.
Cool.
Montana.
Yeah. Yeah, I think she's from Montana, but I think it's Idaho. Dave, you probably know.
Exactly.
So they came out, and I was like, wow. And Jess will laugh at this because I would, be dressed relatively presentable, for class, comfortable. It was the only day I was in my sweats with a baseball cap on, and I was like, are you kidding me? I want to talk to these people, and I look like a slob. And anyway, it was right around towards the end of when I was getting, hopefully going to get my license, and I came to the potluck that we have here at Thanksgiving, and I got to meet Ann Yance, and I got to meet a whole bunch of other people. I got to meet Josh Burnett.
Because
who's
Ann
one of
Yance was the team leader.
She was the
She
team
got
leader at the
licensed.
time. And I remember her sitting down with me, and at the time, too, I had someone who was asking me to be on a team. And so I was like, well, I don't know what this team concept is, and I have no idea. I talked to Saber, I talked to Ann, and both of them said, no, you can do this. You can do this on your own. I know you have it in you. Just please go and try it out. And I did. So I run with the calendar year. So I got my license, I think officially in December, started with Keller Williams in January. I love it because I do run with the calendar year. It kind of stinks at Christmas. I know that I have to reset.
Can I pause you for 2
Yes.
seconds?
Yeah.
So, you thought you were gonna be an Allen Tate agent, so then, what?
Well,
what-
I went
what
over
about
to
Jake?
Allen Tate across the street. I interviewed over there, and I've got a lot of good friends who are Tate agents, but they did not give me a tour of the office, and I thought that was kind of weird, and was just very, very cagey about what the splits were. And what I loved about KW was that, number one, I knew what my splits were. Number two, I knew that we had a capping structure, and number three, I had opportunities outside of just real estate, everyday selling, that, such as being a coach, being a team leader, being an OP, having ownership opportunities in other market centers. So, it was a no-brainer. And I remember for a little bit, I kind of went back and forth thinking, God, Allen Tate, how do I say no, But it was a no-brainer. To me, I'm like, if you're not gonna walk me around the office and introduce me to some agents, because I was so eager and I wanted to meet as many people as possible in real estate. So, yeah, so that was that.
So you're in your first year, how much did you sell in your first year?
About 3.4 million in
First
value.
year?
Yeah,
So
Yeah.
awesome. And you were rookie of the year, weren't you?
I was.
Hell yeah.
Yep. And just to give you guys some perspective, I think there were 15 people in our night class compared to what you guys have seen. So, it was 2012, 2013, and the market was just starting to shift upward. And some of my best friends are still, my folks that were in Ignite class, they may not be here anymore, but we talk to each other all the time about real estate.
So that 3.4 million your
Yeah.
first year, where did that business come
So it was,
Cause you felt like you didn't really
yes.
know anybody, right?
I didn't know a lot. I was only here for about 2 years. So, you know, lesson to everybody. You don't have to know, you don't have to be here, born and bred here. 2 years, yeah. I got to know a lot of people through my neighborhood. You know, I'd go to the pool with the kids because I'm still staying home with them and, you know, doing the kiddie stuff. And then I did kind of mirrored a little off of Mark Watson. And I did an open house because I think he did when he got into real estate. He did an open house every single weekend his first year. That's what I did. And I'm still getting business as a result of it. I mean, it's unbelievable to think. So every single weekend, I learned quickly that I wasn't good at doing 2 in the same weekend. It just was too much for me, and I needed that downtime because I'm sure we'll talk about that. It was really difficult for that first year or 2 of balancing work life, you know, everything else. And then I think that first year I had about 4 listings, I think 4 listings in my neighborhood, which I didn't have my first closing. So I started in January, Ignite started in January. I didn't have my first closing until May, but yet I still capped and always looking
You
at a
still
year.
close 3.4 million.
Yeah.
That is amazing.
So a lot of it some of it had to do with price point. You know, my neighborhood at the time was like upper 3s to 5, and that was a great price point. That's a great price point to be in, even now, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Fabulous price point. And there was a decent amount of turnover. Again, nobody had any market share. My first listing appointment was with my neighbor, so that kind of made it a little easy, right? And I was like, oh crap, I don't know how to fill out a listing. I had like a listing agreement. I was like, I don't really know what I'm doing, and I hope I did it right. And it's okay because they don't know either, right?
They have no idea that
They have no idea that we don't know, and we forgot to check off a box. They don't know any of that stuff. So, and I sold that, which at the time, I sold it in 20 days for full price, and that was pretty good back then. That was really, really, really good. So what I did was I took that information and then went like crazy in the neighborhood with it. So as soon as I listed it, I put out a flyer. My neighborhood happens to have the mail slots. Put out a flyer.
Well, newspaper. I know what you mean, but yeah.
Yeah, you know,
Newspaper.
newspaper slots.
The
So
legal
that
way to put
cut
it.
down on the costs. Colored flyer, and then once it went under contract, same thing. Once it sold, same thing. And so as a result of that, I got like 2 FSBOs and then another listing before the end of the year. And then those were my 2 main sources of business. And then so I was really afraid to talk to people about real estate, and I still don't. I'm better at it, but not great. I'll talk to somebody at a bar, right? If you're sitting there, I don't know how much business I got from the bar, and I'm not an alcoholic, at least.
Well, Karen and I, and here's the deal though, this is true. Karen and I strongly believe in, if you're
Absolutely.
going to dinner, sit at the bar. Always sit at the bar if you're going to dinner. I don't care if it's a date night, sit at the bar. You know, like, come on now, with your friends, whatever.
Mhm.
Every time we go out to eat,
Yeah.
sit at the bar.
Jail.
I don't want a table.
You know my friend Jael?
Jail?
Jael. You guys have to go see her. She's a bartender over at the Vine. We closed her this year, her first time home buyer. And then I think I got 2 pieces of business as a result of that because of they all know each other, right? And they talk to each other. And so so anytime I go out with anybody, we sit at the bar.
Yeah.
Even if you're not having a drink, it's a great way to, you're not only meeting the bartender, but you're meeting people around you because more than likely those people are relatively social.
Yeah,
Right.
and there's pretty much a 0 chance of you meeting anyone if you're sitting at a booth or a table.
Yeah.
Because you're not
No
going to lean back
chance,
and go,
right.
hey, how's it
Yeah, how's it going?
What you drinking over there? All right,
Yeah.
cool.
So another example of that is my daughter, she plays volleyball, and we were up at the convention center until 11 o'clock at night 2 weeks ago, and they had a 2-hour break. And I don't know about you guys, I don't do well just sitting around, but a lot of the moms are happy to like sit in the convention center. I'm like, I'm going next door to the West End, and I'm gonna have dinner and a drink. And I sat at the bar, and I'm working with the buy and sell as a result of it. A couple they were sitting next to me, and they were chatting at the bar, and we got our food at the same time, and we started talking about our daughters playing in the tournament, and they said, well, what do you live here? And I said, I do, and I talked to them about real estate, and here we are. Yeah.
So in your first year though, I'm sure you could have improved on something. What would that have been?
Oh. I did do one thing, I'm gonna say the one thing I did right, but then I failed after that because I didn't leverage enough. I've hired Dave. I don't know, Dave, I was in the business, Chip just said to me, if you wanna do this business and you wanna do it well, the first thing you need to do is get a transaction coordinator. Because I had my first deal and I was struggling with all the paperwork, and it's worse now, guys, than it ever has
Yeah.
been. I mean, if you're in this business and you don't have a transaction coordinator, then you just signed up to be an assistant.
Yeah, hire Dave.
Hire Dave.
Yeah.
So I think I did one or two transactions to kind of get the gist of it, and then Dave did everything else for me after that. So Chip was my first coach, and that was some great advice. Moving forward, I did probably not listen enough to my coach, because after that first year, I think I tripled my business into my second year, and it was pretty awful. I almost quit.
Too busy. Not enough leverage?
Not enough leverage. It wasn't that I was too busy, it was that I was so busy doing the things that weren't really generating business, that were kind of falling through the cracks, because that's once you go under contract, right? As far as, I wasn't probably doing enough lead gen, but I was getting business as a result of the business that I had already had. I just didn't leverage myself. I should have probably gotten an assistant pretty well into my second year, 6 months, and I think I waited another 6 to 9 months to get a part-time assistant. So and it wasn't because, because we'll hear this a lot, right? Well, I don't have the money to do it. That wasn't it at all. Because if you think about it, I think I paid my first assistant $12 an hour, and she worked part-time. And, if you do the math on that, if she's working 4 hours a day, what is that? 12 times 4, that's $50 a day. 50 times 4, $200 a month? No, is that right?
$200 a week.
A week.
Oh, wait, okay, $200 a week. So if I can't afford, but yet I'm so busy, what's the problem? I'm not running a business here, right? So, anyway, it was hard to find the right person too. If you wait too long and you don't have everybody in the talent bench, and then all of a sudden you're like, crap, I don't know what the hell I'm gonna do, right? So, I made a lot of mistakes the first year. I think just stretching myself too thin, not spending enough time with my family, because I waited till my kids got into school full-time on purpose to do this. So they went to school full-time, and then I signed them up for the after-school program. Are you guys familiar with that? Union County has one, I'm sure Mech does too. It's the cheapest gig in town. It was $50 a kid, so that they could stay from 2 to 6 o'clock, and I'm like, this is perfect. So, if Mike's traveling, I can still do my business. And they'll leave at 7 o'clock in the morning. I mean, if between 7 and 6 isn't long enough, I don't know what is.
Okay.
Right? You can't accomplish a lot within those 11 hours. But it was to the point where I was working, till midnight, because obviously I get a contract and I'd be so excited about it. And it's the reality is that everything can wait till the next day. There's nothing that can't wait. Negotiating a contract is the only thing right now that I stop my day for. 8 o'clock at night, if I'm working with an agent, I'll still negotiate it. If we need to get signatures, because it's my listing, yeah, I'm doing that. But other than that, I don't do it. I don't drop. Somebody calls me and says, hey, I wanna go see some houses tomorrow. I don't answer my phone. That's it, after a certain time.
Yep.
But that took years to kind of build that thick skin.
So in the first 3 years, I know you mentioned open houses. It sounds like you're starting to farm, and then some sphere of influence. Can you expand on open houses, farming, and sphere of influence, and maybe give a couple amazing examples? I know one that's in my head that you taught me, but amazing examples of what you did to stick out in all 3 of those.
Okay. Open house. So, did you guys take the class with Kevin? So open house is, and I see a lot of agents doing this, and this is not a negative thing, but if you want to do an open house, you want to do it at a high level, you need to choose the open house. If you put it out there that, hey, I'm available for an open house, and guess what, it's in the middle of, it's 30 miles from your house, and it's in the middle of nowhere, well, is that, an efficient use of your time?
And vacant, so you're standing out leaning against the countertop for 3 hours.
Right, exactly.
And no one's coming.
And nobody's coming, and it's in the middle of nowhere, So the first open house I think I did, it was for Mary Ridenhour, and it was more of like, okay, I need to kind of get this, and it was out in Wax, I was in Lawson. And then the second open house I did for Dale Bishop, and that was right here in Thornhill. And you know, I was petrified because I knew Tom Silrod lives in Thornhill, and I was like, you better not show up at my time, at my, I want anybody in here. I was like, oh, you know, I was so nervous. And then Josh Burnett used to stop at my open houses
Oh,
just
really?
to check on me. And my family did too, because, you know, there's some, you gotta be careful, just gotta be aware. That open house, I had like 25, 30 people that came through. And so a lot of it is, number one, rapport, you know, develop the rapport. I don't follow anybody around. I greet them at the door, you know, provide them with my information. It's rapport. If they feel like they're being pushed, it's just like me. I walk into a, you know, if I walk into a car dealership, I do not wanna be bothered. I walk into White House Black Market, don't bother me. I'll let you know when I'm ready,
Yep.
right?
If I need you,
I'll let you know, yeah. Are shopping for any special occasion?